Welcome to Navy Paints, and in this video I'll be painting a flesh Hound of Khorne. Let's crack in. Before painting, I've sprayed the model with Vallejo's Hobby Paint White. This first paint here is Carbon Black from Liquitex, it's one of their inks. I've run this through the airbrush. For the inks, the airbrush was set at about 25 psi, and I've sprayed the model from underneath. This will give me a nice shadow to follow in the future, and I've stopped spraying this colour once I got one nice even coat. Now using Pyrrole Red from Liquitex, I've sprayed all the white areas, so coming from above. And as I did with the black, I've given the red one nice even coat. I also hit underneath the model with a light coat of the red. This will keep his underbelly dark, but also help when I paint the red in the future. With the red dry, now I've come in with Liquitex's Titanium White. I've sprayed this onto the parts of the model where I think the light will hit. For this, I set the PSI in the airbrush down to 15, as I was spraying a little bit closer to the model and scared it was going to pull if I went a bit stronger. With the Titanium White down, now I've gone back to the Pyrrole Red and given the model another coat of this colour. It's hard to see in the video, but in person the red is a lot brighter. With the base coating of the skin down, now it's time to move on to some detail for the model. I've gone to Greenskin from the Amyu Painter. With this colour, this is painted straight from the pot. I've painted all the warts or scales around his body, the webbing on the front of his frill here, and the fin down his back and a little bit on his tail. With the green down, I've gone back to the red. I've used Vermellon Red from Vallejo. This is applied to the model with a little bit of water mixed in the paint. All I'm doing here is starting to map out the texture of the muscles. So with this colour, I'm painting all the skin, avoiding all the recesses of the model, trying to keep them dark. This red is very close to the ink we laid down earlier, so the difference won't be super noticeable. But doing this helps map out the skin for future steps. Also to note, when applying all the skin tones, as the shadows get darker underneath the model, you don't want to apply the bright skin tones under there, as the light won't really hit there. If you do want to apply colour underneath, just water down the colour, make it really translucent, and slowly build it up. To paint his nails and some of the spikes on his back, I've gone with Hardened Carapace from the Amyu Painter. This is applied with 2 thin coats to the model and a little bit of water mixed into the paint. For his collar of Khorne, I've gone with Balthasar Gold from Citadel. This is applied straight from the pot, and I've applied this with 2 to 3 thin coats. For his tongue, I've gone with Blue Violet from Vallejo. This is painted straight from the pot and applied with 1 coat. For the teeth, I've gone with Rakarth Flesh from Citadel, Again, painted straight from the pot, and this is applied with 2 thin coats. Now onto the oil step. I've gone with 2 colours. The first is Quinacridone Rose, and the second is Burnt Umber. They're both from Van Gogh. This is about a 60-40 mix of the 2 colours. I've mixed these with a little white spirit from Windsor & Newton. The consistency of the paint I'm looking for is that of an acrylic paint. Before painting the model with the oil, I've sealed it with Mr. Super Clear Matte Varnish. With this mix, I've applied it to all the areas where I think the shadow will gather. So the underbelly, on the inside of all his legs, in all the tones of the muscle, around the face, basically from about midway down. You don't have to be too precise when applying this, as it's an oil paint. All we're looking to do here is just darken up all the recessed areas and the shadows. With that oil paint applied, now it's time to remove a little bit of it. So using an old brush here, I've dipped it in a little bit of white spirit. And just like when you paint on the colour, I'm painting over the model, removing those colours. So just leaving it all in the recesses and taking off all the bright areas where I think the light will strike. And in the darker areas, leaving the paint in there. If you do happen to remove too much, just reapply the paint and have another go. This does take a little bit of time. You could use a cotton swab to speed it up, but I find using a paintbrush in this situation gives me the precision I need. And do that over all the areas of the model which has the oil. Once I've cleaned up all the oil I like, I've hit that with a hairdryer for about 5 to 10 minutes on low setting until it was bone dry before moving on to the next step. If you don't want to do that, you can always just leave it overnight to dry naturally. For all the green areas of the model and his collar, I've made a mix of permanent green from Van Gogh and Windsor & Newton white spirit. The consistency I'm looking for is that of an acrylic paint as we did before. And again, using a paintbrush, I've just simply applied it to the model. If you happen to get it on the other colours, don't worry, we can always remove that with a brush or a Q-tip. To remove the permanent green from the model, I've dipped the Q-tip in a little bit of white spirit and just gently rubbed it away, leaving it in the recesses. I could have used a paintbrush like I did earlier, but for these areas I think a Q-tip is a lot easier. I had some time, so I let the paint dry naturally overnight, but if you need to speed it up, you can always use a hairdryer on low just to dry up the paint quickly. With the oils down, I've gone back to the Vermellon Red from Vallejo. This time with the colour, I've gone straight from the pot. I've painted all the red areas of the model with this colour. Again, trying to avoid all the recesses, leave them nice and dark. And any areas where I've tried to build up some shadow, I've also left those dark. The only exception is some areas on the inner thighs, or the stomach, where I wanted to lighten up the black and make it a little bit more red. I watered down the red like a glaze, and went over those dark areas a few times. Glazing the area like this will leave the dark shadows, but also give them a little bit of colour thanks to the glaze. This next colour here is a 50-50 mix of the Vermilion Red and Scarlett Blood, and they're both from Vallejo. And like the previous step, we're just applying it the same way, but just leave a little bit of the red underneath and paint a little bit less of the area. All these transitions are really subtle, but the end result is worth it. This next colour is pure Scarlett Blood from Vallejo, and again like before, just painting a little bit less of each area. This next highlight is a 50-50 mix of Scarlett Blood from Vallejo and Mars Red from the Army Painter, and like before, just painted a little bit less of the skin. And this final highlight is Mars Red from the Army Painter. For the frill and fin of the Hound, I painted these the same way as I did the skin. After the first coat, just painting less and less of each colour as I went along. So this first highlight here was an 80-20 mix of Greenskin and Snake Scales, both from the Army Painter. This next highlight was a 50-50 mix of the Greenskin and Snake Scales. The third highlight here is a 30-70 mix of the Greenskin and Snake Scales. And this final highlight is pure Snake Scales from the Army Painter. To paint these scales or warts on the Hound's body, I've used the same two greens, but instead of doing so many steps, I broke it down just to 3. The first step is pure Greenskin from the Army Painter, the second step is a 50-50 mix of Greenskin and Snake Scales, and the final stage is pure Snake Scale. For his Collar of Khorne, I've highlighted it with True Copper from the Army Painter. For his tongue, the first highlight is Blue Violet from Vallejo. The second highlight is a 70-30 mix of Blue Violet and Rakarth Flesh from Citadel. And the third highlight is a 50-50 mix of the Blue Violet and Rakarth Flesh. Back to the teeth and the Rakarth Flesh. I've painted each tooth about 3/4 of the way up. I've then given the teeth a wash with Agrax Earthshade. This is straight from the pot. And then again with the Rakarth Flesh, I've painted each tooth about halfway up this time. For the spikes on his back and his claws, I'll give them another coat of Hardened Carapace from the Amyu Painter. Painting the nails was done like the rest of the model, so I've gone with blends here. And with each step added, just paint a little bit less of the nail. I start off with a 90-10 blend of Hardened Carapace from the Amyu Painter and Rakarth Flesh from Citadel. This second highlight is an 80-20 mix of the two colours. The third highlight here is a 70-30 mix of the Hardened Carapace and Rakarth Flesh. The fourth blend here is a 60-40 mix of the two colours. The next blend here is a 50-50 mix of a Hardened Carapace and Rakarth. And the final highlight is a 40-60 Hardened Carapace to Rakarth Flesh. The nails ended up a bit bright for my liking, so I've watered down some Agrax Earthshade. This is about a 50-50 mix. This will dull down the nails and help hide the blends. With the same wash, I've applied it also to the belly and the inner thighs. For the eyes, I've gone with Corax White from Citadel. This is straight from the pot. The eyes on these models can be a little bit tricky, so take your time. If you do happen to make a mistake, just apply some red over the top and go again. The final step of the model is to wash the eyeballs. I've gone with Blue Tone from the Amyu Painter. This is straight from the pot. I've applied this 2 to 3 times on the eyes, starting on the outer rim of the eyes, letting it dry, and just reapplying, getting closer and closer into the centre. The idea behind this was to leave the centres white and slowly blend out to a blue. With that done, the Hound is now complete, mounted to a base of your choice, and he's ready for the tabletop. Thanks for watching Nephew Paints. If you liked the video, please click the sub button or leave me a like. If there's anything you'd like to see in a future video, please leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Catch ya.